I'm standing in front of the judge, my hands trembling on the dark wooden table. My son Darius is pointing a finger at me, as if I'm a stranger, as if I hadn't spent countless nights caring for him when he had a fever, as if I hadn't given up my own dreams so he could achieve his. This old woman just knows how to waste what she doesn't deserve, he says in a voice I don't recognize. A voice full of venom I never thought I'd hear from my own son. Judge Hayes nods slightly as he reviews the stacks of papers before him. Darius's lawyer, a woman in a sharp gray suit named Brenda Cole, who has glared at me with contempt since I walked into this courtroom, smiles like she's already won. I feel the floor shifting beneath my feet. I am 72 years old, and I never imagined I'd end up here in a court of law, facing the only child I brought into this world, listening to him demand every single penny of the fortune my husband Clarence left me when he closed his eyes for the last time 6 months ago. But what none of them know, what not even my own son suspects, is that I am about to utter 3 words that will change everything. 3 words that will make the judge turn pale and leave Darius completely silent. If you've ever felt betrayed by your own family, if someone you loved with all your heart ever turned their back on you for money, then you need to hear what happened next. Because this isn't just my story. It's the story of every mother who has been judged, scorned, and forgotten by the children they raised. 6 months ago, my life was completely different. Clarence was still alive, although weak, battling the cancer that stole his strength day by day. We were happy despite everything. 45 years of marriage had taught us that true love isn't measured in good days, but in how you face the bad days together. Clarence, or Claire as I called him, was a man with working hands and a noble heart. When we got married, all he had was an old pickup truck and an impossible dream to build his own logistics and trucking company. I worked cleaning houses to help pay for fuel. We ate simple meals like rice and beans for months to save every last dime, but we did it. Through sacrifice, sleepless nights, and every drop of sweat, we built something from nothing. The company grew. 1 truck became 2, then 5, then 20. We employed 50 families. We bought the house where we raised Darius, where we celebrated every birthday, every Christmas, every major moment of our lives. Darius was our pride. We gave him everything we never had: education, comfort, safety, opportunity. Claire always said he worked so hard so our son would never have to go through what we did. And Darius was a good son once, caring, respectful, attentive. He would visit every week, hug me, and say, "Mom, you are my treasure." Claire and I would look at each other with that unspoken pride parents share, the look that says, "We did it." We raised a good man. Everything changed 3 years ago when Darius met Skye Thorne at a business conference. She was elegant, well-dressed, always in high heels and expensive perfume. From the first day he brought her home, I knew something wasn't right. The way she looked at our house, as if she were appraising every object. The way she spoke to me with that fake courtesy that hides contempt. But Darius was in love, or thought he was. They married 6 months later. Claire squeezed my hand during the ceremony and whispered, "I hope we're wrong about her." I nodded. Even though my heart knew we weren't. Darius's visits became rare. First every 2 weeks, then once a month, then only for holidays. He always had an excuse. Work, traffic, commitments with Skye's family. And when he did come, she came with him, her eyes still measuring, still calculating. Then Claire got sick. The diagnosis shattered our world. Advanced pancreatic cancer. The doctors gave us 6 months, maybe a year if we were lucky. I called Darius crying. I needed my son. Claire needed his son. Darius came, but Skye stayed in the car. "She has hospital allergies," he said. Claire looked at me with tired, knowing eyes. During those last months, I cared for my husband with every fiber of my being. I gave him his medicine, bathed him, read to him, and held his hand through the nights of pain. Darius came less and less often, always in a rush, always checking his watch. 2 weeks before Claire died, he called his lawyer, Aisha Reed, a family friend. They met in the study for hours. When Aisha came out, her eyes were red. She hugged me and said, "Eleanor, your husband is a wise man. Trust him, even when he's gone." I didn't understand. Claire died at home, in our bed, my hand holding his. His last words were, "Forgive me for what is coming, my love, but it was necessary. Protect her, Aisha." I didn't understand. I just cried and held his body until it grew cold. The funeral was crowded. 50 families came to say goodbye to the man who had given them work and dignity. Darius stood there in black with Sky beside him in a deep wine-colored dress too elegant for mourning. He didn't shed a tear. A week later, Aisha came to my house with a folder, Claire's will. I sat on the sofa where we had built our dreams together. "Eleanor," she said. Claire left clear instructions. I expected the usual. Everything to me, then to Darius. But there was more. Claire had written in his own trembling hand, "I leave all my assets in trust, managed by my wife, Eleanor Davis, until such time as she deems appropriate. My son Darius will receive his inheritance only when he demonstrates the character, honor, and respect I tried to teach him." I froze. "What does that mean?" I asked. Aisha said gently, "It means Claire loved him but didn't trust the people around him. She mentioned a special clause but didn't explain it fully." 3 days later, when Darius heard I would manage everything, his face hardened. Sky's lips turned white. They said nothing then, not yet. After the funeral, the house was too quiet. Every object reminded me of Claire, his coffee mug, his shirt, his scent in the closet. Darius stopped visiting. When I called, he was always too busy. 2 months later, he invited me to dinner. "We need to talk about some things," he said. My heart leaped with hope. Maybe my son wanted to reconnect. I baked him his favorite pound cake. When Sky opened the door, she didn't smile. The house was beautiful but cold, gray, lifeless. No family photos, no warmth. Darius didn't even stand to hug me. Dinner was tense. Sky finally said it. "Claire's money." My chest tightened. "Money?" I asked. Sky's tone was sharp. "Don't play dumb, Eleanor. The company is worth millions, and you control all of it. Darius is the rightful heir. It's not fair that you, a woman your age who never really worked, control everything." Her words cut like knives. I looked at Darius for support, but he just stared into his wine. "Darius," I whispered, "do you think the same?" He looked up, and in his eyes I saw resentment. "Mom, you don't need all that money." "You live alone. I have plans. I can expand the business." "Your father left clear instructions," I said, tears threatening. Sky laughed bitterly. "He left it to you because you manipulated him while he was dying." I left their house heartbroken. My son had let his wife humiliate me. The pound cake I brought sat untouched. That night I cried until morning. Days passed. Darius called once to apologize, but it sounded rehearsed. "We need the money, Mom. You can't keep it all." His words hardened something inside me. Then I found the truth. While reviewing company documents with Aisha, I discovered personal loans, all in Darius's name. Thousands of dollars. "He had gambling debts," Aisha said softly. "Claire paid them secretly. He wanted to protect you from the truth." Later that night, I found a letter from Claire hidden among his papers. His handwriting was weak but steady. "Eleanor, if you're reading this, Darius is pressuring you. Forgive me, but he has gambling debts. Sky knows. She encourages it. She married him for money. I made the will this way to protect you and give him one last chance to prove who he really is. If he comes to you with love, he's still our son. If he comes with lawyers, we've lost him. In that case, show no mercy. Aisha knows what to do." I cried for hours. Claire had seen everything. Weeks later, the yellow envelope came. A court summons. Darius was suing me. He wanted everything. His argument, I was mentally incompetent. He wanted to have me declared unfit to run the business. My own son wanted to destroy me. Aisha came that same afternoon. Her expression was grave. "It's time," she said. "You need to know the full clause." She read it aloud. "If Darius sues his mother or tries to take her inheritance, he loses all rights to any part of the estate." My breath caught. "So if I go to court, he loses everything," Aisha said. Claire had created the perfect protection. But there was more. I hired a private investigator. Aisha said quietly. What he found about Sky is disturbing. She handed me a folder. I didn't open it that night. I just stared at it for hours, afraid of what truth lay inside. Outside, the wind howled, and I knew that once I looked inside that folder, nothing in my life, or Darius's, would ever be the same again. Finally, when night had fully fallen, I opened the folder, and what I read made my blood run cold. The report said Sky had been married twice before, both times to older men, both times ending the same way. She gained control of their bank accounts, emptied them, and vanished. There were photographs, credit statements, even legal complaints. The first husband had lost everything. The second one filed for bankruptcy within a year of meeting her. She was a predator dressed in perfume and pearls. I sat frozen, staring at the pages while tears slipped down my cheeks. I wanted to call Darius that moment, to scream, to warn him, to tell him she was destroying his life. But then Claire's voice echoed in my head. His words from that last letter. If he comes with lawyers. We've already lost him. My heart ached because I finally understood what Claire had seen all along. I couldn't save Darius by shielding him. I could only save him by letting him face the truth. For 2 weeks before the hearing, I lived in quiet torment. Every time the phone rang, I prayed it would be Darius calling to apologize, to stop the lawsuit, to say he had realized the mistake. But he never did. He had chosen his path, and it was leading straight toward me. On the night before court, I read Claire's letter again, and this time the tears didn't fall from weakness but from resolve. He had left me the strength I would need to face our own son. That night, I promised him, and myself, that I would protect everything we had built together, even if it meant breaking my heart forever. The next morning, I woke up before dawn. The house was silent except for the ticking of the clock on the wall. I dressed carefully in the pearl-colored suit Claire always said made me look strong. When I looked in the mirror, I didn't see a frightened old woman anymore. I saw a survivor. I saw the woman who built a company from nothing, who raised a son, who stood beside her husband through sickness and storms. Aisha arrived to pick me up. She held my hand in the car and said softly, "Today, we stand for truth." Outside the courthouse, the air was heavy and gray. Reporters whispered as we walked past. Inside, I saw Darius arrive with Sky and their lawyer, Brenda Cole. Darius looked sharp in his dark suit, but his eyes had changed. Cold, distant, hollow. Sky wore an ivory dress and that same cruel little smile, the smile of someone who believes she's already won. When the judge entered, everyone rose. Judge Hayes, tall, dignified, silver hair perfectly combed, looked at me for a brief moment with something like pity. The hearing began, and Brenda Cole spoke first. Her words were smooth, polished, poisonous. She painted Darius as a loving son, wronged by a manipulative, confused mother who had seized control of her late husband's estate. I sat still while every lie was poured into the record, that I was senile, that I had isolated Claire, that I had forced him to change his will. Each word felt like a dagger, but Aisha's hand on mine reminded me of the plan. Stay silent until the time is right. The lawyer called witnesses I'd never met. Men who claimed to be financial advisors, neighbors, even an old employee who said I forgot things and seemed lost. Lies, all of it. They were paid actors in a script Sky had written. Darius sat there nodding, letting them destroy me one sentence at a time. When they finally called him to the stand, my heart cracked open. He swore to tell the truth, then began to recite lines I knew weren't his. He said I was controlling, that I never trusted him, that I'd kept him from speaking to his father alone in those final days. I couldn't hold it anymore. "That's not true," I shouted. The courtroom froze. The judge banged his gavel. "Order! Mrs. Davis, sit down or I'll have you removed." My lawyer's voice whispered in my ear, "Don't let them win, Eleanor. They want you to explode." I swallowed the pain and sat down, trembling. Darius looked satisfied. My own son, pleased to see his mother humiliated. Then Sky took the stand, her voice soft, rehearsed, full of fake tears. She said she had tried to be a good daughter-in-law, that I had rejected her, That I was paranoid and hateful. She lied so beautifully that even the stenographer paused to listen. But the worst was when she said, "Your Honor, I'm genuinely worried Mrs. Davis is destroying her late husband's legacy." The audacity made my stomach twist. I had protected that legacy with my life. When Skye finished her performance, Brenda Cole stood tall. "Your Honor," she said confidently, "we have clearly shown Mrs. Davis lacks the capacity to manage this estate. We request she be declared incompetent and that all assets be transferred to her son, Darius Davis." For a moment, it felt like the whole world held its breath. The judge nodded slightly and turned toward us. "Does the defense wish to respond?" Aisha rose slowly. Her voice was calm, steady, like a bell cutting through fog. "Yes, Your Honor. The truth doesn't need to shout to be heard." She opened her folder. "The plaintiff's story is built on lies, but the law is built on proof. And we have proof." She called me to the stand. My knees trembled as I stood, but my spine stayed straight. I placed my hand on the Bible and swore to tell the truth. When I sat down, I looked straight into the judge's eyes and said, "My name is Eleanor Davis. I am 72 years old, and I built everything my husband left behind with these two hands." My voice was calm, but every word carried 45 years of truth. I told the court how I cleaned houses while Claire drove his first truck, how I managed accounts, how I kept the business alive through recessions and storms. I showed medical reports from 3 doctors proving my full mental health. I handed over financial statements showing that under my management, the company's profits had grown by 22% since Claire's death. The courtroom began to shift. People whispered. Even Judge Hayes leaned forward, studying the papers carefully. "These are impressive results," he said. "How did you achieve them?" "By honoring my husband's values," I answered, "and by trusting the people who've worked with us for decades." I could feel Skye's confidence begin to crack. Her fingers twisted nervously. Brenda Cole's pen stopped moving. Then Aisha did what she'd been waiting for. "Your Honor," she said, "there is a section of Mr. Clarence Davis's will that has not yet been read into the record. It changes everything." The courtroom went still. The judge raised an eyebrow. "Go on." Aisha handed him a thick document, the full original testament. The judge read in silence for a few moments, his expression tightening, then softening, then turning grave. "This is extraordinary," he murmured. Darius shifted in his seat. "What clause?" he demanded. Aisha's voice filled the courtroom. "According to this document, Mr. Davis made his son's inheritance conditional. He would receive it only if he proved character, responsibility, and respect. And if he ever sued his mother or tried to take her inheritance, he would lose all rights to the estate, immediately and forever." A gasp spread through the room. Darius's face drained of color. Skye froze. Brenda Cole looked like she wanted to disappear. "No," Darius yelled, slamming his hands on the table. "That can't be true." But the judge held up the document. "It's signed, notarized, and certified by 2 doctors. It's entirely valid." I stood slowly. My knees were shaking, but my heart was calm. I looked at the judge and then at my son. "Your Honor," I said, "there's something I need to say before you continue." 3 words. My voice filled the courtroom, strong and clear. I didn't inherit anything. A silence fell so heavy it seemed to press against the walls. "What do you mean, Mrs. Davis?" the judge asked. "I mean my husband didn't leave me his fortune. He left me a responsibility. I am the guardian, not the owner. He trusted me to protect his legacy until our son proved himself worthy. My husband didn't write a will. He wrote a test of love and character." The judge's eyes softened with understanding. "A test of character," he repeated quietly. I nodded. "And today, I finally have my answer." I turned toward Darius. "You failed, son. You chose greed over love. You chose to drag your mother into court rather than trust your father's wisdom. And now, by your own hand, you have lost everything he built for you." Darius's eyes filled with tears of anger and shame. Skye's face twisted, and she stood up shouting that it was all fake, that we had fabricated evidence. The judge slammed his gavel. "Order!" he commanded. The room fell silent again. Aisha wasn't finished. Your Honor, she said, there is more you need to see. The motive behind this lawsuit. She laid out another set of documents. Casino receipts, credit card statements, loan contracts. The plaintiff, Mr. Davis, has accumulated gambling debts of over $200,000. His wife, Sky Thorne, owes another $160,000 in credit card debt. Together, they owe more than $400,000 to lenders, some of whom have criminal ties. The judge's face turned grim. So this case was never about inheritance, he said slowly. It was about paying off illegal debts. Sky tried to protest, but Aisha cut her off. We also have photos, Your Honor, taken by a private investigator. She handed them to the bailiff. The judge examined them, and his jaw tightened. They showed Sky with another man entering hotels, laughing, drinking, living a double life while she urged my son to betray his own mother. Darius stared at the photos as his face collapsed from anger into disbelief and finally into heartbreak. He turned to Sky, whispering, "Tell me this isn't true." She didn't answer. She didn't have to. The silence was confession enough. You used me, Darius said through clenched teeth. You used me to get money from my family, she smirked faintly. And you let me. Then she walked out of the courtroom, her heels echoing against the marble like gunshots. Darius stayed frozen, staring at the floor. The judge called for a 30-minute recess. As everyone filed out, I remained seated, watching my son, a grown man now broken by the weight of his own mistakes. When the room was nearly empty, I walked over and sat beside him. He didn't look at me. "Mom," he whispered, "I don't know who I am anymore." I reached out and took his trembling hand. "Then start over," I said. "Start with truth." He didn't answer, but I saw something flicker in his eyes. Maybe the boy he once was. The bailiff announced the end of recess. Darius and I returned to our seats. The judge came back looking solemn. The entire courtroom seemed to hold its breath as he prepared to deliver the verdict. He adjusted his glasses and spoke slowly. In 30 years on this bench, I have seen many families destroyed by greed. But this case is different. Clarence Davis was not only a businessman, he was a visionary. He built not just a company, but a moral test, and today his wisdom has been proven. Mr. Davis, you failed that test. Darius's shoulders sagged. By suing your mother, by trying to have her declared incompetent, you have forfeited all rights to your inheritance. The judge's voice carried finality. Therefore, I rule that Mrs. Eleanor Davis retains full control over all assets and that the lawsuit is dismissed with prejudice. His gavel struck once, echoing like thunder. And just like that, it was over. The battle for Claire's legacy, the war between a mother's love and a son's greed. The courtroom emptied slowly. Brenda Cole slipped away. Sky was gone. Darius remained seated, silent and hollow. I looked at him one last time before leaving, and in that silence, I realized something. The victory didn't feel like triumph. It felt like loss because even though I had won the case, I had lost my son. Outside the courthouse, sunlight hit my face. Reporters shouted questions, but I didn't answer. Aisha placed her hand on my shoulder. "You did it," she said softly. I nodded, but my heart was heavy. "We did what Claire wanted," I replied. "But it still hurts." That night, back home, I sat on the porch as the wind rustled through the garden we had planted together. The roses were blooming again, wild and free, just like Claire would have liked them. I whispered to the air. I kept my promise, my love. I protected everything we built. A faint calm settled in my chest. But deep down, I knew the story wasn't finished yet. Because life always gives one more test, one more chance at redemption. And the next time I saw my son, the choice between anger and forgiveness would be mine alone. A month after the trial, Darius showed up at my door. I hadn't seen him since that day in court, and for a moment, I thought my mind was playing tricks on me. He looked thinner, his once perfectly pressed suit replaced by simple jeans and a worn jacket. His eyes were tired, not just from sleepless nights, but from the heavy weight of guilt. "Can I come in?" he asked softly, his voice almost breaking. I nodded and stepped aside. He walked in slowly, like a man entering a church to confess his sins. We sat in the same living room where we had watched movies when he was a little boy, the same room where he used to fall asleep on my lap, his small hand clutching mine. The silence between us was thick, but it wasn't angry anymore. It was the kind of silence that comes after a storm when the world is too fragile to speak. "I divorced Sky," he said suddenly. His voice was flat, tired. Or rather, she divorced me. The moment she found out there was no money, she packed her things and left with that man from the photographs. She didn't even leave a note. I stayed quiet. There were no words that could mend what greed and betrayal had broken. "I sold everything," he continued. "The car, the house, the furniture, everything I owned to pay what I could of the debts. But I still owe almost $100,000. I'll probably spend years trying to pay it off." His hands trembled. "I know you don't owe me anything, Mom. I just needed to say this." He looked at me then, and for the first time in years, I saw not the angry man from the courtroom, but the frightened boy who once ran to me after scraping his knee, seeking comfort. "I was wrong," he said, his voice breaking. "Dad was right. You were right. I let greed blind me. I let Sky use me. I let money destroy everything good in me. I don't deserve forgiveness. I don't deserve anything. But I need you to know I'm sorry." Tears rolled down his face, and this time, they weren't rehearsed. They were real. They were raw. They were the tears of a man who had finally seen himself clearly. My heart ached, torn between love and the memory of betrayal. I took a slow breath. "Darius," I said quietly, "words are easy. Change is hard. If you truly want to make things right, then prove it. Not to me, but to yourself. Live the way your father taught you to. Work with your hands, earn your peace, build your name again." He nodded, wiping his face. "I will," he said. "I don't expect forgiveness, but I'll spend the rest of my life trying to become the man Dad believed I could be." He stood up to leave, and before walking to the door, he turned and said something that caught me off guard. "Thank you." I frowned slightly. "For what?" "For not giving me what I wanted," he said. "Because if you had, I'd probably be dead by now. You didn't just protect Dad's legacy, you saved my life." Then he walked out into the fading light, leaving behind an echo of his footsteps and a faint glimmer of hope. For weeks after that visit, I thought about everything that had happened: the courtroom, the lies, the pain, and Claire's wisdom that had guided me through it all. The company continued to grow under my care, and the workers who had been with Claire from the beginning treated me not like a boss, but like family. When I looked at them, I saw 50 reasons to keep going. Their children, their homes, their futures. That was the real inheritance worth protecting. I called Aisha one afternoon and asked her to gather everyone for a meeting. When the boardroom filled with the same men and women who had stood beside Claire through the hardest years, I stood and spoke from the heart. "This company is worth $5 million, I said. "And after much thought, I've decided what to do with it. I'm creating a trust to make sure this company continues to run long after I'm gone. Every employee who has worked faithfully will own a share. No one will ever lose their job because of greed or corruption. We built this together, and we'll protect it together." The room fell silent for a moment, then filled with soft applause. Not for wealth, but for gratitude. "And one more thing," I added. "I'm donating $2 million to help people struggling with gambling addiction and families affected by financial abuse. I'll do it in Claire's name because I know that's what he would have wanted." There were tears in the room, even from men who hadn't cried in years. After the meeting, Mr. Wallace, one of the oldest employees and one of Claire's first drivers, approached me. "What about you, Mrs. Davis?" he asked gently. "What will you keep for yourself?" I smiled. "Peace," I said simply. "That's all I need." And it was true. For the first time in years, I felt light. I went home that evening, sat by the window, and watched the sunset paint the sky in golden rose. I whispered, "We did it, Claire. We really did it." In that moment, I felt him there, not as a ghost, but as a quiet presence, proud and peaceful. 6 months later, the company was thriving. Darius had found a job as a truck driver, the same way his father started. He was living in a small apartment on the outskirts of town, paying off his debts little by little. I never heard from him directly, but word traveled. People said he had joined support groups for gambling, that he was working long hours, that he was humble now, kind, and determined. They said he carried a photograph of his father in his wallet and talked about him with respect again. I didn't reach out. I wanted to give him space to rebuild himself. Sometimes love means stepping back and letting someone walk their own hard road. One quiet afternoon, while cleaning out an old cabinet, I found our wedding album, the one Claire and I had filled together with pictures from our early years. All laughter, youth, and promise. Tucked between the pages was an envelope with my name written in Claire's shaky handwriting. My heart jumped. The envelope was sealed and dated just weeks before his death. I opened it carefully, afraid the paper might crumble from age. Inside was a letter. His familiar handwriting filled the page. "My dearest Eleanor," it began, "if you are reading this, it means everything I planned has come to pass. It means Darius walked the road I feared he would take, and you had to make the hardest choice of all, to protect him by not protecting him. I know what that must have cost you. I know your heart, my love. I know that letting him fall must have felt like dying twice. But sometimes the greatest act of love is to let those we cherish face the consequences of their actions. You saved him, Eleanor, even if he doesn't know it yet. You saved our legacy, our people, and the very meaning of what we built together. I hope one day when you sit by the window at sunset, you feel my presence beside you. Because I am there, as real as the wind, as steady as the ground beneath your feet. I love you beyond time and beyond death. Always yours, Claire." I pressed the letter against my chest and wept, but they were not tears of sadness. They were tears of release. Claire had been right about everything. The legacy wasn't just the company, the money, or the house. It was the lessons, honesty, work, sacrifice, love that endures even when tested by betrayal. That was what truly lasted. I folded the letter, placed it back in the album, and whispered, "You can rest now, Claire. Everything is safe." The years that followed were quiet. The trust grew, the employees thrived, and the Davis Company became known not just for its success, but for its fairness. People said I was wise. I laughed when they said that. I wasn't wise. I was simply a woman who had learned the hardest truth of all, that love without boundaries becomes weakness, and forgiveness without change becomes surrender. I hadn't lost everything in that courtroom. I had gained something greater, clarity. Darius hadn't just lost his inheritance that day, he had lost his mother's unconditional trust. But in the years that followed, he began to earn it back, piece by piece, not with words, but with actions. One spring morning, almost 2 years after the trial, a letter arrived at my house. I recognized the handwriting immediately, Darius's. Inside, there was no money request, no excuses, no apologies, just a single folded page. "Mom," it read, "I've paid off all my debts. I've been clean for 18 months. I drive trucks for a small company now, and every time I see the sunrise on the open road, I think of Dad. I think of what he built from nothing. I think of you. I'm still not asking for forgiveness because I know that's yours to give when you're ready. I just wanted you to know I'm trying to be the son you both deserved. I love you." The letter was stained with a single tear, maybe his, maybe mine. I placed it beside Claire's old letters, and for the first time, I smiled without pain. That night, as I sat on the porch under the stars, I thought about how strange life is. How love can break you and heal you all at once. How the people we lose never really leave. I looked up and whispered, "We did it. Claire, he finally understands." And I swear, for just a second, I could almost hear his voice in the breeze saying, "You always knew what to do. Eleanor, if you've ever been hurt by someone you love, if someone close to you has betrayed you for money, remember this. Dignity isn't inherited, it's built. Peace of mind is the greatest treasure you can ever own. And forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means freeing your heart so you can live again." Sometimes saying no is the most powerful form of love there is. Because when you say no to being used, you say yes to your worth. I've learned that forgiveness doesn't always come in a single moment. It comes slowly, like sunrise after the darkest night. And sometimes, the ones who fall the hardest rise the strongest. Darius lost everything, but maybe, just maybe, he found himself. And that, in the end, was what Claire wanted all along. Not wealth, not legacy, but redemption. So, to you listening to my story tonight, if you've ever stood where I stood, broken but unbowed, remember this: love with all your heart, but protect your soul. Because money can be lost and regained, but dignity, once surrendered, is gone forever. And when the storm passes, and it will, you'll see that the people who truly love you never needed your fortune. They only needed your heart. If you stayed with me till the end, thank you for listening. If my story touched you, give this video a like. It helps more people find it. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what part of this story spoke to your heart. And if you want to hear more true, emotional stories like this, subscribe to the channel. I have more coming that will move your soul. Remember, love is powerful, but dignity is priceless. Until next time, take care of your heart. It's the only legacy that truly lasts. And as I sat there under that quiet sky, I thought about how every story, no matter how painful, carries a seed of peace inside it if we're brave enough to look. My story wasn't really about money or inheritance. It was about love tested by time. It was about choices, the ones that build us and the ones that break us. I realized that forgiveness isn't something you give when someone asks. It's something you choose when your heart is ready to heal. Darius had fallen far, but he had started to climb again, one honest mile at a time, behind the wheel of a truck just like his father once drove. And every mile he drove was a silent apology. Every sunrise a new chance to be better than yesterday. Sometimes I imagine Claire watching from above, smiling that proud, quiet smile of his. Maybe he sees us both now. Me sitting on this porch, Darius on the open road. Both of us finally understanding what he tried to teach us our whole lives. That love isn't proven by what you say, but by what you do when life tests your heart. I whispered into the wind. He's learning. Claire, he's finally learning. The night air felt warm, almost like an embrace, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel alone. I looked down at my hands, the same hands that once scrubbed floors, that built a business, that held a dying husband and raised a lost son. They were old now, but strong, and I smiled because they had never stopped working for love. I realized then that life doesn't give happy endings. It gives honest ones. And honesty, in its quiet way, is the truest peace there is. So if you're listening right now and life has hurt you, if someone you love has turned their back on you, please don't lose faith. Sometimes the ones who hurt us are the very ones life is still shaping into who they're meant to be. Let go when you must. Hold on when it's right, and always protect your peace. Because in the end, peace is not found in wealth, or in what others give you. It's found in knowing you stayed true to yourself when everything tried to break you. And as the stars shimmered above my porch that night, I closed my eyes and whispered, "Thank you. Claire, thank you for everything." The wind rustled through the rose bushes, and I knew that somewhere, somehow, he had heard me. The story of our family wasn't one of loss after all. It was one of survival, forgiveness, and love that refused to die. If this story touched your heart, give this video a like. It lets me know you felt something real here. And if you've ever faced pain like Eleanor did, share your story in the comments. I read everyone. Tell me where you're watching from, and if you believe, like I do, that peace is the greatest inheritance any of us can leave behind. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next story, because every week, I share another piece of life, another truth we can all learn from together. Until next time, take care of yourself, forgive where you can, and never forget, dignity and love are worth more than all the money in the world. Good night, my friends.